Hello my friends, welcome to my channel, Lindy's Magpie Reads. I'm Lindy, I read a lot. I read all kinds of books and I've got 6 great books to tell you about today. Before I get to those, I just want to mention the other things going on in my life, like rowing. I've just been really enjoying rowing lately. The exercise itself, facing backwards, doing the same movement over and over for an hour and a half. Go figure. I love it. And I also love the environment. I row on the gorge, which is a saltwater inlet from Victoria Harbor. It's very near to where I live. There's lots of wildlife. I think I'll include a short clip of watching a great blue heron when I was on my way to rowing one morning this week. I also love knitting, and I'm 2.5 balls of yarn into the vest that I'm making. I'll show you an in-progress photo here. It's so soft and lovely to knit with. It's 100% alpaca. Just lovely. It's going to be toasty warm for those early mornings rowing when the weather gets a little colder. And I also made another trip to Butchart Garden, so just 1 week apart. I've been back to the gardens, and so much can change in just 1 week. I feel so lucky to be living in such a beautiful, beautiful place. Well, the next exciting bookish thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm giving a presentation called Queering Your Reading Shelf. I'm doing this for the Strathcona County Library in Sherwood Park, Alberta. It's going to be online, and you are all invited to attend. I'll include a registration link down below. You do not need to be a member of a Strathcona County Library. You could be anywhere. The date is Monday, June 10th, and to figure out the time where you are, count backwards or forwards from 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. I have got so many recent queer books to talk about. Lots of memoirs, fiction, poetry by authors from the whole LGBTQIA2S+ spectrum. So, I'd love to see you there. And one of the books that I'm going to be talking about at that presentation is this next memoir. It's in graphic format. It's by Sara Soler, who's a Spanish cartoonist, and this is her story. She and her partner were in what they considered to be a heterosexual relationship, and then Diana came out as a trans woman. And the whole journey is documented so well in this memoir. Not only Diana's coming to realization experience, but also Sara's, because she's had to start thinking about herself as someone who's attracted to a woman, not a man, and thought of herself as bisexual. And as she was doing a bunch of reading, she came to the realization that she was also demisexual. So this was a term that she hadn't even heard of before. The description is: demisexuals, or demis, are people who can't feel sexual attraction if they haven't developed a deep emotional bond with someone. In general, they are not drawn to any particular gender. They can feel attracted to any human being. She goes, well, wait a sec, that's me. They do stay together quite happily. I love all the interactions they had with their friends and various family members, coming out to everybody. Here's an example with one of Sara's grandmothers. Things went well with Grandma Drori too. Okay, so you used to be boyfriend and girlfriend, and now that she's a woman, you're friends. Couples can only be men and women, so if you're both women, you must be friends. I mean, she seems to have understood, but she's downgraded us. She didn't seem happy or to really get it, but she did want to. Later on, they told me what actually happened, and I love this part. Your great-grandson has started crawling. And what will this one really be? Boy or girl? Whatever they want to be. You can't be sure of anything in this world. Yeah, this is definitely a feel-good memoir where you can see the cartoony style illustrations with lots of emotion. They're kind of manga inspired, I think. And the translation, by the way, is by Silvia Perea Labayen. And I was able to access this on the Hoopla database. Next up is another nonfiction, Around the World in 80 Trees. It's by Jonathan Drori, who's British. And it took me a month to get through this book. There's 80 different sections on amazing things about trees. So let me give you some examples. But first, I want to mention that there are illustrations by the French artist Lucille Clerc, and they add so much to the enjoyment of this beautiful book. There's the leyland cypress, which grows tall and narrow and very dense, and it got to be really popular in England for use as a hedge. By the late 1990s, Leylandii hedges were a cause célèbre. The media loved publishing stories of feuding neighbors coming to fisticuffs over lost light. Hedge strife caused a suicide and at least 2 murders. He talks about the coco de mer, which is a kind of palm that has the heaviest seed in the world. So each fruit has a single seed in it that can weigh up to 30 kilograms. That's 65 pounds. You don't want to be standing under one of those when it falls. I did see this tree growing in Foster Botanical Garden in Honolulu, and if I remember right, they had an area roped off where you couldn't walk because it had a large fruit maturing on the tree. There's the peepal tree, or the sacred bow. This is the tree under which Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, received enlightenment about the 6th century BC, and a sprig from that tree was planted in Sri Lanka at Anuradhapura in 288 BC. And when I was in Sri Lanka in 1979, I went to Anuradhapura and saw that tree there, and it's pretty amazing to see trees that are that old and revered as sacred. In the section on the Brazil nut, I learned that even though Brazil nuts grow in the Amazon and the Orinoco basins, almost all of the exports are from Bolivia, not Brazil. And it's not actually a nut, it's a seed. So that had me going to the internet because I couldn't remember the difference between nuts and seeds. Always good to be learning things. And I also learned that the tree has a talent for taking up radiation from the soil and concentrating it in its fruit. And so if you eat a lot of Brazil nuts, you can register on radiation counters, but not enough to be a health concern. Well, back to Brazil. Brazil was actually named for the tree Brazilwood, and it is a tree that was so valuable because of its red dye. So much of it was chopped down and shipped to Europe that it's very rare now. There's only about 2,000 trees left in the wild of Brazil wood. It's very similar to a tree in Asia called sapan wood. They're both Caesalpinia species. And I have used sapan wood to make red dye. Here's a sweater that I made with sapan wood. It's a beautiful color. I had heard that chiclets, the gum, came from chicle, or the sapodilla tree from Chile. It's the latex, the sap, that was traditionally used as a Band-Aid and as a chewing gum and breath freshener. And some American entrepreneurs in mid-19th century started importing tons and tons and tons of this latex to make chewing gum. They had really good advertising. William Wrigley included sticks of gum in soldiers' rations. And so, once again, with so much demand for one kind of tree, the population was decimated, and so many trees were damaged that they just couldn't provide the quantities of. In 1930s, the USA was importing 8,000 tons a year, and the US military was, demanding more and more. So they developed a synthetic substitute. It's a type of vinyl made from petroleum, and that's what chewing gum is made from today, if you're wondering. There are trees that are so poisonous, every single bit poisonous. One I'd never heard of is called the sandbox tree, and it has a unique way of distributing its seeds. They're inside a dry capsule, and as the moisture changes inside, the pressure builds up until it just explodes. It sounds like a pistol going off. And the seeds fly at speeds of up to 150 miles an hour, and they can fly as far as 150 feet. So they're far away from the tree so that they have light and can grow there. Plants are so amazing. And next up is a third book of nonfiction. This one is a picture book biography of the artist Faith Ringgold. It's called, subtitled Narrating the World in Pattern and Color, and it's created by two black women. The writer is Sharna Jackson, who's British, and the artist is Andrea Pippins, who lives in the Netherlands. It's put out by the Metropolitan Museum, and the art at first didn't exactly appeal to me. It's a very flat kind of style, but it did grow on me. So it talks about Ringgold's early childhood, growing up in Harlem. She spent a lot of time in bed. She was ill with asthma. Her parents took her out to experience lots of culture. She wanted to become an artist and study art, but only men were accepted into that art college, so she studied education and took lots of art classes. And her art took on lots of social justice activism themes. And one of the things about seeing artists' work in picture book biographies is you usually don't get to see the actual art itself, and those are for copyright reasons. But in this book, I guess because the Met has examples of Faith Ringgold's art, there are some at the back. But this one which is called the Street Story Quilt. I found quite disappointing because it's a huge, huge piece of art. It's 12 feet across, and you can hardly see any detail in it. So I don't know why they didn't either do gatefolds, to make it larger, or even if they would have had just a small bit enlarged so a person could see more detail. There are 3 separate stories of people in a brownstone. That sounds pretty amazing. Here's the artist, Faith Ringgold, who's still alive. I think she's in her mid-80s now. Another thing about this book is there are a lot of questions for kids who are reading it. What can you see? Talking about the art of observation, and throughout the story there's encouragement for kids to think about stories, think about their style, and that's inspiring kids to create their own masterpieces. Next up, another work of nonfiction, this time in audiobook. It's called A City on Mars. Can we settle space? Should we settle space? And have we really thought this through? It's by a husband and wife team, Kelly and Zach Weinersmith. Kelly Weinersmith is a bioscientist and Zach is a cartoonist. Now the audiobook is read by Brittany Pressley, but there are several footnotes, kind of nota benes, in which the original authors read those sections, which is kind of nice. So both of them are tech geeks. They say they are, and they are all for space settlement. However, when they found out that many questions have not been satisfactorily answered, they started going, whoa, 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 whoa. Before we talk about putting human settlements on the moon or on Mars, we need to answer these questions. The living conditions are terrible there. There's either no air or poisonous atmosphere. The soil is poisonous, like on Mars, that it's full of perchlorates. Soil, by the way, is actually the wrong word. I should be saying regolith. I heard this word enough in the audiobook. Regolith is loose dust and crushed up rock that lies on bedrock. So there's no organic material in it. It's just small or slightly bigger pieces of rock. Regolith. There are temperature extremes. There's the problem of particle bombardment. So, for example, scientists did do some tests using some kind of jelly-like substance that would imitate a human body, and they shot iron molecules, individual molecules at it, and it created holes the size of a human hair in this substance. So if our bodies are exposed to radiation and these kinds of particle bombardments, not good. Not good at all. There is so much humor in the telling of this. It's popular science. It's really engaging to read. They argue with the fact that with the Earth warming up, it's going to be necessary to leave the planet. So they say leaving a 2 degrees warmer Earth for Mars, which has an average surface temperature of -60, would be like leaving a messy room so you could go live in a toxic dump. And what they're saying is by the time we have the technology to set up a protected dome or underground place where we could live on Mars and keep an atmosphere going and deal with human waste and whether or not people can procreate in these kinds of conditions and that children can thrive. By the time we figure out all of those technical things, we'll have figured out how to deal with a warming planet or how to deal with maybe a chunk of asteroid that's coming towards Earth. Yeah. If you liked Mary Roach's Packing for Mars, I think you would really like this book too. And now I've got a couple of novels for you, starting with a middle grade novel called Tyger. It's by S.F. Said. I have to show front and back because it's so cool. The illustrations in this book are by Dave McKean. And there's lots of illustrations too. My YA book club is going to be discussing this tonight. It received, British Book Awards, Best Book of the Year. This is a kind of genre blend. So obviously inspired by William Blake and his Tyger, Tyger Burning Bright. And in this 21st century London, slavery was never abolished. So it's a dystopia. There are alternate worlds, and a being has come from one of these other worlds, a supernatural being who's taken the shape of a tiger. And Tyger interacts with a couple of young people who have dark skin and are not treated well on account of that. There's racism, there's classism. Tyger in this book reminds me a lot of Aslan in the Narnia Chronicles. So if you liked that series, I think you'll like this book as well. It's a standalone, but it's got these religious overtones that are similar to the Narnia Chronicles, and it's a really inspiring message about realizing one's own possibilities and having the courage to follow through on the strength of your convictions, I guess. So that is Tyger. And I have one more novel to tell you about. This is an adult novel that I listened to in audiobook. It's called A History of Burning, and it's by Janika Oza. This book was a finalist for the GG Awards last year and also was shortlisted for the Carol Shields Award for Fiction, and it won the Asian Pacific American Award for Literature in 2024. So much praise, much deserved. I had kind of put off reading it for a while, partly because it's a big fat book, or long in audio. I think it's about 14 hours long. It's got 2 different audiobook narrators, alternating depending on if the voice is a man or a woman. And it follows 4 generations in a Gujarati family. So it starts out in 1898 in Gujarat, and there's a 13-year-old Pirbai who is looking for work to help support his family. They're nearly starving, and he ends up being kidnapped and taken in a boat across to East Africa in what's now Kenya, where he's put to work with a bunch of other South Asian men building the railroad. And their family, so it follows his family from there all the way through to Uganda, and how all of the South Asians were expelled from there in 1972, and how the family ended up getting split up. Some of them ended up in Canada, and at the end of the novel, we're in 1992, and Pirobai's great-grandson is protesting police brutality on the streets of Toronto. And in between, there's so much drama, but the writing just grabbed me right from the beginning. The story is so well told. It's a family saga with all kinds of things that happen, and there's another expulsion too. So Pirobai's son marries a woman in an arranged marriage, and she comes from Karachi. So this is 1947. Pakistan is being separated from India, so Hindus are leaving Pakistan, and there's all this movement happening. So the geopolitical state that affects individuals is really well described in this book, and I recommend it. What can I say? I really liked it a lot. So that's all I've got for you today. Thank you, you beautiful people. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate hearing from you, and I would love it if you would attend the Queering Your Reading Shelf presentation that I'm giving. So remember, there's a link for that down below, and stick around for a little bit of typical wildlife in the gorge, the great blue heron. Happy reading, everybody. Bye for now.